Some more details behind this documentary. The producers of this documentary are speaking out after being slammed for this documentary looking like it was exploiting Wendy Williams. Not only that, Wendy Williams' best friend since she was 13 years old and is also featured in this documentary is slamming the documentary, saying that she thought that it was going to be very different. It was going to be a, quote, comeback kid story. But the biggest damning part of our report today has to be about Wendy Williams' guardian being sued by another person for over $30 million, accusing her and her company of robbing someone else. Welcome back to the Kempire channel, your number one source for pop culture news and music, entertainment, reality TV, and so much more. As always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on breaking news when we go live or when we upload. So the last couple of days, we have been recapping and reporting on the Wendy Williams two-part documentary that aired on Lifetime over the weekend. So if you missed those recaps, we talk all about what plays out in this documentary. But one of the things that we talked about was the production. We said based off of what we saw, we have to remember they controlled the edit. Will Selby and Sean Zanotti, Will who plays as Wendy Williams' manager and Sean Zanotti who plays the publicist, they don't come across great in this documentary. But we said, you know what, production, they seemed like they were very sensitive to what was happening. But in a new interview with The Hollywood Reporter, they make it clear they were brought on to tell the story of Wendy Williams' comeback. And that comeback was going to be a podcast. They are saying if they knew that Wendy Williams had dementia, they would have not taken on this project. So let's just get into what they said to The Hollywood Reporter. But our friends over at Rolling Stone write this. They said the producers behind the new Wendy Williams documentary said that they wouldn't have begun filming if they knew about her mental health diagnosis ahead of time. In a new interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Where Is Wendy Williams producers Mark Ford and Brie Miranda Bryant discussed the news last week that Williams had been diagnosed with a new primary progressive aphasia and frontotemporal dementia. Of course, they said, if we had known that Wendy had dementia going into it, no one would have rolled a camera. Ford said Monday in the interview in which they shared that they are currently unaware of Williams' whereabouts and that they have not talked to her since last April when they did that last interview for the film. They said the diagnosis that was announced was not the information that any of us had going into it, Bryant said. So people were watching the journey with the information that we didn't have in those first 2 hours. And I think that's part of the confusion and the upset and the outrage. They said the pair responded to some criticism that the documentary could be interpreted as, quote, exploitive, saying that they tried to remain, quote, as transparent as possible with it. In the doc, Williams' son, Kevin Hunter Jr., reveals that Williams' dementia diagnosis had also been given in 2021 and says that the doctors told him that it is alcohol-induced. They continue, said, we wanted people to understand the journey of the filmmakers and how upsetting it was for all of us in certain instances and also how outrageous in some ways the situations were, said Ford. Like Wendy would be left alone without food, completely on her own in that apartment with stairs that she could easily fall down. There was no one else there 24/7. So these are just all the questions that we had throughout. And look, I think a lot of people that are calling this documentary exploitive are people that haven't watched it. Because for those of us that have watched it twice, both days I've watched twice, you could see that the producers were probably more of an advocate for Wendy Williams than the people that Wendy Williams put in place, like Will Selby or Sean Zanotti. Because they were even asking questions of Will and Sean, like, so do you believe that she has a problem? Like, they were giving them the questions and really asking what I think all of us would ask. Do you not see that she should not be alone? Do you not see that she has a problem? Do you not see that she's losing memories? They are saying that they came into this not knowing what they know now. Ford also shared that he was, quote, not familiar with any of the folks attached to the press releases shared about Williams' diagnosis, aside from Williams' guardian, who sued Lifetime, asking that it be pulled off air. Did it surprise us? I don't think it surprised us, Ford said. Of course, we're not medical professionals, but anyone watching the film can see that there are signs that were there and then progressed rapidly. They said, and also dementia is an insidious disease, right? It's tricky. You're not really sure what's going on. And I think that's also important. And this is why I give a little bit of grace to Will Selby and to Sean Zanotti. However, if Kevin Hunter Jr. is saying that she was diagnosed in 2021 from a doctor with dementia, I'm pretty sure Kevin Jr. told this to Will Selby. But maybe he didn't. They continue, it says, so you're able to see this journey of discovery across these 4 hours, and I do hope people stick with it to the end. Yes, I get why they're saying this, because when you get to the end and you see this interview with Wanda and you hear this phone call between Wanda and Wendy, it's worth getting to the end. It is a very hard watch, but it is worth getting to the end because it's almost hopeful towards the end. Because they say, then you'll see what the intention ultimately became, which was that Wendy's suffering and the family's suffering is not in vain. That there is a message here that is universal and people need to hear. And again, that echoes the experience of thousands of other families under this guardianship system. And the documentary filmmaking is always a tricky thing. I get what they're saying because they are using a form of something that they're being paid for, something that's being put out there to the world. And that's why a lot of jobs of news and entertainment news is tricky because you're getting this information out there and people are saying that it is exploitive. However, at the same time, a lot of us have only heard rumors of dementia, rumors of alcoholism, rumors of this and that. But now you see it, and now we know, wait a minute, what is going on with guardianship? Didn't realize that this guardianship situation was happening here in New York this way. Didn't realize that this is what Wendy has been going through. So not only that, Wendy Williams' best friend, Regina, if you follow Wendy over the years, you know Regina, you know Reg. That's how Wendy has always referred to her. She talked about her in her radio days. She talked about her on her daytime talk show. Well, she did an interview with Chris Cuomo saying that she thought that this documentary was going to be something different. So did the producers, Reg. But I also think, along with people that are fans of Wendy, we have to understand family and people that are her friends for years feel even differently. They want to see Wendy come back. They want to see this sort of like comeback story. They want a happy ending to this. So she felt like the documentary was completely different than what she had signed up for. But she also points out some of the bad behavior, allegedly, of the Guardian, where Wendy had to reach out to her to get food. And there were times that Wendy didn't have food. And even Sean Zanotti, her publicist at the time, Regina and Sean were ordering food for Wendy because Wendy could not get food from the Guardian, allegedly.
I just got a piece of information that the woman who is currently the appointed guardian has been accused of a scheme to rob a different client. There's a $30 million suit against her. You have said you have concerns about what is going on with this guardianship. How so?
When I was in New York and staying with Wendy in the summer, I noticed when she would call, she had no access to her money. So every time she had to do anything that she had to pay for, she had to go through the Guardian. And she would call to order her breakfast at 7:30 in the morning with the Guardian, and she would take the order, and the order wouldn't show up until sometimes noon. And so Wendy wouldn't have any food. And when I went back to LA, I would have to send her food from Los Angeles to New York through delivery service because the communication wasn't there, and she had no other access to money than this Guardian. And so that's what was concerning to me, because she was telling me she didn't have food. And her publicist also, who lives out in LA, both of us were going back and forth sending food to Wendy because she wasn't having access to food.
You know, I was reading in here, Regina, where you were like,
certainly,
where you were worried that one of the impacts of this documentary, or whatever you want to call it, is going to be that Wendy won't work again. But Do you believe that she'll ever be
I
in
think
control of her? Go ahead, please.
I think that the depiction of this, what I thought was going to be a comeback kid story, seems to be like a demise of Wendy's story. And I haven't heard an official diagnosis from a doctor. You know, I've heard from this team that we don't know who the team is, and from Kevin and her nephew Travis, that no doctor has actually confirmed these diagnoses. So, I mean, maybe I'm in denial because I'm so close to the issue. And I have, in reflection, I see the behaviors that could potentially be such a diagnosis. But I don't want to believe that she is, at this point, unproducible. That's not my opinion.
I'll tell you, when I was with her a few summers ago, I guess now, she was impressively a mess. I felt very badly for her. I talked to her about it directly, and as you might imagine, she had absolutely no appetite for the discussion. But she was putting down a lot of substances. And she then wound up going on break to get herself together. Do you believe that Wendy had figured out how to deal with her behaviors before this diagnosis?
Yes, I think that Wendy has always, I've known Wendy since we were 13 years old. Wendy's always been doing what she wants, when she wants, how she wants, and she's very clever. So she could potentially have been getting away, quote unquote, with a diagnosis potentially like this for a long time because she's quite smart, and yeah, she could.
So this is another thing that comes up. And another thing that's important, because if you watch a documentary, at the end, Wanda is on the phone with Wendy, and she doesn't want to tell producers what she talked to Wendy about. She's like, document it, write that you reached out, date, time, and you received no response. We're connecting the dots. She's building a case because every single year, guardianship is up for review. It's up for review this year. Speaking of the Guardian, I just want to say this. Because this is already public knowledge, it's already been reported on media outlets, I believe, for the intentions of, especially with the lawsuit, Lifetime did not want to say the Guardian's name. I'm just going to say, because it's already public knowledge on multiple media outlets, we will be mentioning the Guardian's name. However, I remind our community and anyone watching this video, just because you get this information does not give you the right to harass or do anything to this person. We are reporting what's already public knowledge because the Guardian and her law firm, she's an attorney, are being sued by another person that she was the guardian over. So the Sun writes this. They said, Wendy Williams' guardian has been accused of a scheme to rob a client in a $30 million lawsuit while controlling the troubled host's finances. The U.S. Sun can exclusively reveal, and they've been up on this Wendy Williams story for years at this point, since everything has been playing out over the last 3-4 years. All right. They said the U.S. Sun can exclusively reveal that Wendy's guardian, Sabrina Morrissey, her firm, Morrissey & Morrissey LLP, and about 10 other attorneys were named as defendants in this lawsuit. They said Morrissey and other attorneys were accused in the suit of conspiring to, quote, perpetuate a baseless guardianship against an individual, Jose Verdugo, in New York, who had won a $5.5 million personal injury claim. When I saw this morning, I was like, oh my gosh. The plaintiff in the case, attorneys Michael Fomelhaft and the Fomelhaft law firm PLLC, represented Verdugo after he sustained a head and back injuries from a construction accident. The case was opened in November of 2022 and August of 2023. This is overlapping with the Wendy stuff. The plaintiff filed they can discontinue the above entitled action without prejudice and without cost to either party as against the other, which means Fomelhaft is allowed to refile charges after the claim or bring the case to another court, depending on the statute of limitations. Fomalhaft claimed that the trouble started around 2009 when a former associate of his, Herbert Rodriguez Esquire at Schwartz, Goldstone, Kempise, and Cates LLP, contacted his client. They said the court documents allege that Rodriguez misrepresented to Verdugo about Fomalhaft's handling of his case and told him and his wife, who desperately needed the award money, that his case could not be finalized unless Verdugo consented to a MHL Article 81 guardianship that Verdugo did not want or need. That's where Wendy's guardian, who was criticized by the star's family in the docuseries by Lifetime that aired this past weekend, allegedly became involved in the dispute. Rodriguez and his firm initially partnered and conspired with Sabrina Morrissey Esquire of M&M to impose on Verdugo an MHL Mental Hygiene Law Article 81 guardianship, the court documents state. Under the guise of protecting and vindicating Verdugo, they jointly pursued a dual litigation strategy aimed at getting rid of Fomalhaft and allegedly reaping Morrissey and Morrissey's substantial court-awarded fees as guardian counsel through litigation, maligning Fomalhaft legally and ethically. They said the suit claims that Wendy's conservator became guardian of Verdugo on January 19th of 2010 and continued to October of 2015. The complaint also alleges that she was involved in a litigation related to the conservatorship. The suit goes on to claim that Morrissey and the firm SGCK were, quote, empowered by both the confidence that their fee applications could be judicially rubber-stamped and the consistent judicial resistance to affording Verdugo an opportunity to demonstrate his capacity under the New York mental hygiene law, and thus the invalidity of the guardianship defendants have been untrammeled in their scheme. The suit alleged that the guardianship judges also played a role in the alleged scheme. That's an important thing to note. The suit alleged that the guardianship judges also played a role in the alleged scheme. If you watch the Wendy Williams documentary, they had an expert who has written about guardianship saying that what we're seeing throughout the United States is that more and more judges are assigning these guardians that are not families over the families. Because we would assume that judges would always choose the families first, unless they say that family has shown that they're not capable of doing it for whatever reason. So it has all of us looking at, the Wendy Williams family like, why wouldn't they choose you? Well, Wanda says in the documentary, she said that she was more than willing. She didn't know what a guardianship was. They said, you take some training. She said, fine, we'll do whatever. Only for them to all of a sudden just sort of the wall came down, according to Wanda. So in this article, they said the suit alleged that the guardianship judges also played a role in the alleged scheme. Why? Are they receiving money under the table? We don't know. So they continue in a quote, ongoing ex parte communications between judges in the guardianship part and the guardian's attorneys have also facilitated the scheme. Defendants have conspired to perpetuate a baseless guardianship over a ward named Jose Verdugo under the guise of protecting Verdugo's best interests, the lawsuit alleged. For more than a decade, defendants have imprisoned Verdugo in a humiliating and oppressive guardianship by manipulating and serially deceiving him, as well as New York Supreme Court and Appellate Division. The complaint, which details over a decade of litigation related to the conservatorship, including filings pertaining to the guardianship of the ward and various other court actions on his supposed behalf, accused Wendy's conservator and other guardianship attorneys of falsely perpetuating a baseless guardianship to silence and legally incapacitate Verdugo from acting on his own behalf. The plaintiff alleged that the litigation, which in part drained Verdugo's settlement with excessive attorney's fees, also stemmed from a $5,000 discrepancy in 2007. In the following years, Verdugo was under the control of various guardianship attorneys, including Wendy's current guardian, Morrissey. A slew of litigation was pursued in the time since Verdugo was placed under guardianship that the suit alleged ate up a massive amount of his personal injury award. The lawsuit alleged under the banner of supposedly protecting Verdugo, using these sham litigations as a vehicle to amass extraordinary and fraudulently based attorney and guardian fees, plundering Verdugo's multi-million-dollar personal injury recovery in the 731 in the process. The case estimated that after Verdugo's initial award, he had 2.47 million left. He was given 5.5. So more than half of that was gone after attorney's fees, case expenses, and discharge of liens. But in the following years, the defendant allegedly pursued litigation without their client's consent to the tune of at least another 1.1 million. The claims were dismissed voluntarily before Morrissey or any of the other defendants filed an answer responding to the specific allegations. Morrissey was also contacted for comment in connection with this story. The suit alleged that plaintiffs thwarted for years Verdugo's rightful emancipation from his guardianship, and that they strenuously sought to insulate Verdugo from discovering that the guardianship was being exploited for their own personal financial gain. The case claims that Verdugo's daughter had tried to get her father out of the conservatorship in 2021. The case alleged that Verdugo's medical records confirmed his capacity for more than a decade. The steadfast refusal of the guardians and the court to arrange for a capacity hearing to determine the necessity of the guardianship ultimately required Fatima, Verdugo's daughter, to file an Article 78 proceeding ordering this hearing. In the suit, multiple doctors gave attestations to Verdugo's cognitive abilities, and they said that he was not deficient. One of the doctors wrote he is not found to be incompetent to a degree that he needs a guardian from a neuropsychiatric point of view. So the Sun continues, and they said that there was more litigation by Wendy's conservator. They said Famo Half's complaint alleged that in 2016, Wendy's conservator pursued additional litigation against Famo Half, to which her ward entered an affidavit. Her client Verdugo allegedly wrote at the time, "I do not support the lawsuit against Mr. Famo Half and his law firm. I got the Peachtree money and deposited it into my bank account. I gave Mr. Famo Half permission to use the rest of the money how he saw fit to pay for my case expenses. I am angry that I am being used. The guardian is using me to sue Mr. Famo Half without my permission, and it continues to cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars in attorney's fees. I understand that Mr. Famo Half tried to get the case dismissed, but the attorney from the law firm for my previous guardian, Michael Weiner, swore that I have been insane since 2003, even though I have never met Mr. Weiner. I understand that Mr. Rodriguez and his current law firm also supported that lie. I am a functioning, intelligent, and independent person employed by different companies in different jobs. I am certainly not insane," his statement concluded. Famo Half's latest lawsuit also accused Morrissey, Wendy's conservator, and other defendants of racketeering. As set forth in the preceding paragraphs, defendants and each of them have engaged in and contributed to a chronic pattern of collusion and conduct entailing both deceit and attempted deceit upon plaintiffs, Verdugo, and the guardians themselves. By reason of the foregoing, plaintiffs have been substantially harmed by the sustaining attorney's fees and expenses, massive loss of professional time, reputational harm, and delay in receiving apportioned attorney's fees, and investment loss and interest. The suit also claims that the defendants violated civil rights laws. In violation of the Civil Rights Law 70, these defendants prosecuted each of the matters in the consolidation purportedly on Verdugo's behalf without Verdugo's authorization when he possessed capacity and the right to be free of guardianship control and thus entitled to make his own litigation decisions. The total sum of punitive damages being sought from all of the defendants was $30 million. So, as I mentioned before at the top of this, the case was opened in November of 2022, and in August of 2023, the plaintiff filed that they, quote, discontinued the above entitled action without prejudice and without cost to either party as against each other, which means Famo Half is allowed to refile charges, alter the claim, or bring the case to another court, depending on the statute of limitations. So I'm not sure if they reached some sort of agreement or settlement in this particular case, but this does not look good for Wendy's conservator, Sabrina Morrissey, and her law firm to be named in something like this. And based off what you've heard over what they were accusing, draining this person's money that he won, this $1 million lawsuit that he won, personal injury lawsuit that he won. When you have someone like Wendy Williams, who probably has 6 times or more, probably more of this amount of money, it says to me that is similar things happening here. As we mentioned before, they're saying that what we saw in the documentary, Wanda is saying document, document, document. My hope in 2024 is that even if Sabrina is doing what she's supposed to do, I would much rather and feel safer that the family were the guardians over Wendy Williams and her health and her finances, because I don't trust Sabrina with that either. Guys, I want to know your reaction to all of these updates when it comes to the Wendy Williams situation. Did you watch the documentary? What did you think of the documentary? What do you think of what Wendy Williams' best friend, Regina, had to say? And what are your thoughts on this $30 million lawsuit that was brought against Sabrina Morrissey just a couple of years ago? As always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on breaking news when we go live or when we upload. Thanks for watching.
You bring the light.